There are those who believe that life would be hell without the devil.
The devil is very, very, very much, it has to be said, a Christian construct.
We have very clearly in the Bible, we have a quote that God says, I've created evil.
To say that God has not created evil would be wrong. God is the creator of everything.
And it's interesting that as people lose faith in God, they're increasing in their interest in the devil, and it's purely morbid.
We all know what evil looks like.
This is a dreadful terrorist attack.
But what exactly is it?
This is an attack on innocence.
The shots just kept coming.
It was an act of pure evil.
Is evil something human or supernatural?
It's time to go.
We have a fascination for evil. It's part of our DNA. We're attracted to it, entertained and thrilled by it, even terrified by it at times. As I was over 20 years ago. I was making a documentary about exorcism when I heard what can only be described as a demonic voice. And I've never found a satisfactory explanation for it. Was it evil? Well, it is our go-to word when something horrible happens to us that we don't understand.
So when we talk about evil, do we mean evil in the sense traditionally Christianity has taught us, i.e. the devil, the face that they put to evil in its simplest sense? Or do we mean evil in the sense that 20th century psychotherapy would talk about all of us kind of having the seeds of good and evil within us, and this is all from Carl Jung in many ways, who of course was Christian as well. Seeds of good and evil, and in different people, like plants in a garden, they grow in different measure. Is that what we mean? Is it inside? Is it outside as the devil? Because of course that's the great attraction of the devil is outside. Or do we not really know what we mean?
The phenomenon of evil has baffled humans since the beginning of time.
For our forebears, there was a sense that our lives are kind of guided by unseen forces. Those that both kind of hinder and harm, but also that help. And so there's an attempt maybe to try and understand in folk custom and folk tradition, what are those forces? How do they manifest? And how can I steer them in the correct direction? In tradition, you would often find examples of evil expressed as a kind of deceitful heart, often. So it's something that relates specifically to the human sphere. So one of the things that you'd find often, a particularly old idea, not just in Ireland but all over Europe and further afield, is the idea of the evil eye. And the evil eye was often where it would be cast on someone if you would engage in false praise.
But for our ancestors, evil wasn't only something human. It also had a supernatural character.
And that generally finds expression in folk tradition in the figure of the devil, taken from Christian tradition, and then even with kind of in his appearance, often manifesting as a human or as an animal or as a natural phenomenon. These personifications that were kind of commonplace, when you pick them apart, they contain a certain dramatic logic and a symbolic and emotional kind of reasoning that's very useful, I would say, to say the least. And I suppose it relates largely to the bewildering nature of human experience, our constant interaction with the unknown, with the infinite, with the boundless.
Growing up in a Christian society, we were taught that God created human beings, giving them free will, the freedom to do good or evil. But we were also taught about the devil and evil spirits who tempt us to do bad things. But do people still believe in the devil as a source of evil? One Catholic priest and psychologist who's regularly called upon to deal with evil spirits is Father Pat Collins.
There's a morbid interest in evil spirits in society, and it's interesting that as people lose faith in God, they're increasing in their interest in the devil, and it's purely morbid. And I'd say to anyone who's got that morbid interest, if you had to deal with evil, as some of us have to do, it is horrible. It's pure darkness. It is the essence of evil because it is totally opposed to God and totally opposed to love.
The battle between good and evil is central to most faiths. But is this conflict an inner, personal one? Or is there a supernatural force that we have to learn to combat as well?
This is something that's drilled into us from childhood, that we have these two inclinations. We have the good inclination, what we call the Yetzer Tov, and the bad inclination, the Yetzer Ra, and there's this constant struggle, and that's really the struggle of life. So we have very clearly in the Bible, we have a quote that God says, I've created Ra, I've created evil. So evil is in the world, not that we should do it, but that we could do it. We have free will, and free will means we constantly have that choice. God says, I'm giving you a choice, life or death, good or evil, make the right choice. There's a lovely story of a man who's struggling with his temptation, and he's giving in to temptation, and he just wants to be free of it. So he comes to his rabbi and he says, Rabbi, please, he says, would you pray to remove this evil inclination so I have no more desires? I just want to sit and be a good person. And the rabbi turns to him and says, without your evil inclination, what would life be worth? What's life all about? And I think that's just such a lovely idea, that life is not about always being good. That's an angel. A human life is about struggle. It's about temptation, sometimes giving in, but hopefully most of the time doing good and not giving in to evil. In Jewish thought, the Satan, or as it's pronounced in Hebrew, the Satan, is very different than in Christian theology. The Satan is an agent of God, and simply an angel doing the tasks presented to it. And the tasks that angel has to do is to tempt the human being and to give desires and to try and cause that human to stray from the path of good.
So, in Jewish faith, Satan, Satan, is not necessarily the bad guy. He's an angel doing God's work. What can Islam tell us about evil? The imam of this Ahmadi mosque in Galway was once a Catholic from Waterford who studied for the priesthood before he converted to Islam.
Another name which has always been attributed to a form of evil would always be Satan, and Islam Shaitan. But Shaitan is always seen, and unfortunately seen by even many Muslims, as something physical. As far as our understanding of the Holy Quran and its interpretation, Shaitan is not a physical human being. Shaitan can be an ideology, a concept. For example, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it is said about him that when he was asked about evil and Shaitan, he said that Shaitan runs through my blood, but my Shaitan has become a Muslim. So from this, we understand that every human being has an inclination to either doing good or bad. And that means either being evil, evil being the broader sense of the word, or being a good human being. Or it's not another creature which has horns and long teeth and these type of things. God is the creator of everything. So, has he created evil? To say that God has not created evil would be wrong. No. He has also given us ample support in not to become evil.
Strange as it may seem, evil has a purpose. For the Muslim and the Jew, God is the creator and root of all evil, so that humans have freedom. It's our response that matters. Do we choose good, life, or do we choose evil, death? Once an Irish Catholic, Timothy Kiernan converted to Hinduism over 30 years ago and became Shaunaka Rishi Das. Did Hinduism change his understanding of evil?
It did. Well, it took the devil out of the equation. You know, every time I look in the mirror, there he is. You know, it was more to do with me and my choices. If we understand that we're eternal by nature, we have everything we need, we're just looking in the wrong direction. We're looking outside for happiness, where it's already inside. It's not about that we're human beings looking for a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. The idea of evil, when someone does something really wrong, from a Hindu point of view, you realize that person's avidya. It's a Sanskrit word which means ignorance. So if you want love and compassion and tolerance and beauty, that's where you go to God, because that's where they reside. And that's called vidya, that's called knowledge. That's the real deal. Point the finger at someone else, including a devil character, it's just bogus. You know, in fact, it's down to me to control my response to things and to have a response that's based on principles and based on decisions that I've made. So you make it a principle of your life not to harm, to minimize harm, absolutely. And if I, as a living person, am eternal, then anywhere there's life, that life energy, and you see it everywhere, you see it in trees and plants and animals, you give respect to all life. That's ahimsa. Minimize your harm in the world around you. So environmental policy changes tremendously. Social policy, political theory has a real effect if you live like that.
There is no devil in Hinduism. To choose evil is to go the path of ignorance. In Judaism and Islam, God is the creator of evil so that humans have the freedom to choose right from wrong. But this isn't what Christians were taught to believe about evil.
Evil is everything negative. Evil stems from the devil. Evil is everything God is not. Evil resides outside and within. Because for the evil to be done, it is done through individuals. It's done through people. And it starts in their hearts. But it comes from somewhere. We mentioned the devil. I strongly believe he plants thoughts in the hearts of people. For every single one of us, we don't have control over the thoughts that come into our minds, but we have control over what we do with the thoughts. Lucifer, the devil, the same person. Yeah, a fallen angel. The Bible makes that clear. He's in charge of everything negative. In a nutshell. The Bible calls him the father of lies. Because a lie is anything that is negative, anything that is opposite to good. That's his domain.
We're caught in a spiritual battle. We're not just dealing with flesh and blood, but with supernatural forces that are impinging upon us and inducing us to make either good or bad choices. I know it's an unpopular thing to say, but when you read the New Testament and what Jesus said, he often referred to the devil. After all, his first encounter is with the devil. He refers to the devil as the ruler of this world and as the prince of this world. So what he's saying is that behind natural human appearances is a malign force that's impinging on people and inducing them to go the wrong way. I think the evil spirit is an energy, and it's not just a concept, that there's something beyond myself.
The devil is very, very, very much, it has to be said, a Christian construct. Other religions don't have it. In a funny sort of way, although the devil can be terrifying and the concept of evil can be terrifying, it's also rather comforting if you make it an external. The whole operating system of the medieval Inquisition was rooting out people who disagreed with the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church wanted to be the only church in Europe. So anyone who disagreed with it, the way they got rid of them, or they persecuted them, or they justified putting them to death, was saying they were in league with the devil. So it's that idea that if you're not with us, you're with him. Well, stick with us and we'll protect you from the devil was very much the message.
That grieves me because that's Peter Sanford using human thinking. And he's part of company with the New Testament. He's part of company with the teaching of the church. And I don't know whether he still calls himself Christian, but he is renouncing key elements of our Christian teaching.
Heavenly Father, it grieves us to know that there is a spirit here that does not acknowledge your lordship in the way that it should.
If you deal with cases where people need deliverance or exorcism, things are going to come up that just don't fit into that simplistic, humanistic way of looking at things.
Do you believe that maybe people can be possessed and oppressed by an evil spirit? Have you experienced that?
Yes, I have, unfortunately.
23 years ago, while making this documentary about the supernatural, I witnessed an exorcism that frightened the hell out of me. There were no cameras. We were only permitted to film this prayer meeting afterwards. Some of the people you see here were praying over a woman who was believed to be possessed by an evil spirit. A prayer was being repeated into her ear. In the name of the Lord Jesus, come out of this woman. Suddenly, the woman's face and eyes completely changed, and she shouted out in a most horrible voice, "No, she's mine." To this day, I've never found a satisfactory explanation as to what exactly that voice was.
That's quite common. She doesn't speak in her own name. It's a voice speaking in and through her. Now, in psychiatry, where you have multiple personality disorder, this would be possible that you would have complexes or personality or sub-personalities in the unconscious bursting through to conscious expression. So you couldn't presume that it was a devil.
We say to the irreligious spirit that is here, the almost blasphemous spirit that's here, leave this house now.
But if that voice is actually telling you about your past and your future and is speaking in a language you don't know or they don't know, but it's perfectly intelligible what they're saying to somebody who can interpret, then you're saying this isn't just the unconscious. There is some force operating through the person's unconscious, perhaps through their complexes. Be on your way. So again, I'm back to my point, the nothing buttery of the reductionists. It's nothing but a subpersonality, and say it could just be a subpersonality, but it could be more than that. And sometimes it is.
I ran out of that place thinking, what in God's name was that?
But isn't it interesting that you ran out of it? Because I think what happens, and here I am as someone who's meant to be interested in religion and the history of religion and religious ideas, the kind of evil question, when you get there, I want to be able to answer it. I want to be able to kind of quantify it, examine it, and come up with a watertight solution. And I think the problem that I suffer, you've suffered, I think that all of us suffer, is it isn't quite as watertight as we'd like it to be. Things still happen very, very occasionally in our life that we can't quite explain by any rational basis at all. And on those occasions, our only recourse, really, given that religion isn't medieval anymore, is to run away from them and think, actually... So houses with ghosts in them, for instance, people will say, this house is haunted, come and see it. And you'll think, I'm not going, actually, because I might see something I don't believe in.
And this young woman who was thumping the cushion screamed out in a male voice, not hers, "No, she's mine." Now, this wasn't a film I was watching. This was real. It terrified me.
But of course, that person would have within them the culture of the notion of possession, the notion of the devil. So another way of looking at that would be that they're already containing all that within themselves, that culture, if you like, so that they can, and therefore they can make it become a reality.
In the 1980s, a group of healthy volunteers agreed to be filmed taking part in therapy workshops that Dr. Ivor Brown used with patients in St. Brendan's Psychiatric Hospital in Grangegorman. As the therapy progressed, it began to look like something I had witnessed over 20 years before.
Now, the essence of what we're doing is to achieve an altered state of consciousness if you like, to enter the dream world. And to do that, there are many roads into that pathway: hypnosis, various kinds of psychedelic substances and so on. But today what we're using is breathing, that's forced hyperventilation, and also music.
If you expose people to very powerful sound, disturbing music, and encourage them into heavy breathing, they will tend then to go into an altered state, and whatever aspects are there will merge. Very often the negative aspects at first.
In an exorcism, they sing hymns and say prayers. Professor Brown's therapy uses music and breathing. Are they just different approaches to what is essentially the same thing? To bring out the negative from within. Maybe that's what Jesus was doing when he cast out demons.
But when I do work on traumatic work, when bringing people into an altered state, in order for them to experience and release traumas that they have frozen, haven't experienced, it's very similar. It's just construing it in a different way.
And you said you were afraid all those years ago, and I can understand that because you're dealing with the unknown, and it's really scary because it's beyond your normal comprehension or experience. But it's not beyond mine, and I know who's boss. See, when I say Jesus is Lord, I believe he has power and authority over all these things, and that evil spirits, powerful though they be, are on a hiding to nothing when we who are acting in the name of the Lord with the power of the Holy Spirit come against them, that we have authority over them. So I believe that there's nothing to be afraid of. But priests and lay people need training in how to go about this and how to distinguish between psychological problems and spiritual problems and how they interconnect at times, as they often do.
Like, I asked the church for an exorcist, to present an exorcist to me, to talk to an exorcist for this documentary.
I know what I'm about to say is not going to be popular with the church, but the church is rightfully admitting its sinfulness in child sex abuse, that we did not defend children. And now it has all the safeguarding measures, and that's excellent. But it appalls me that we have no safeguarding from the evil spirits. I say that in the sense that we don't train anybody to deal with these cases. Priests, it's not that they don't care, but they don't know enough about it. Dioceses, and I say the book has to land on the bishop's desk. Who have you trained in your diocese? And I'd say to bishops, woe to you that neglect the spiritual care of the people.
It bothers you?
Oh, deeply.
Yeah.
The first thing Jesus said when he was sending out the apostles, the very first, I wish the bishops would listen to this. These are the signs of power that will be given to believers. In my name, they will drive out evil spirits. How many bishops, in accordance with Canon 1172, have trained anybody or appointed anybody in the Diocese of Ireland to help our poor, unfortunate people who are oppressed and sometimes possessed by these awful spirits? They've abandoned the sheep.
Whatever about bishops abandoning their flock, there is a reticence among many clergy today to talk about evil.
They really, really, really have sidelined it. The reluctance amongst the clergy to talk about evil is the reluctance amongst the clergy to talk about the devil, because they think, probably quite rightly, that to start standing up and talking about the devil and possession in the sense that the medieval church did makes them seem backward-looking, primitive, not part of the 21st century, not answering people's needs. We also live in a century that is reasonably psychologically astute And if you do finally get hold of one of these exorcists, and I have occasionally got hold of them, for professional reasons, obviously, just to be absolutely clear, I have got hold of them, and they will say 99.9999% of cases I go to, they need psychiatric help. They've got some. So actually, there's quite a lot of overlap now, and you get priests who are psychotherapists who train in those things. But what they will all, if you really, really press them, is say once or twice in their lifetime, they'll come across something that they can find no scientific, no psychological, no psychotherapeutic explanation for.
Based on what I've heard, I think I now have a satisfactory explanation for that demonic voice all those years ago. It wasn't the devil. More than likely, an expression of the inner turmoil of that woman.
Or it may even have been filtered through my own cultural conditioning.
Can we ever really know the real nature of evil? What we do know is that evil is a malignant force, and whether it's human or supernatural, within us or without us, our struggle with evil is an essential part of what it is to be human.